Hi, I'm Doug Draper with Acme Distribution and the Denver Transportation Club, and I'm pleased to present our series, Supply Chain Logistics, the Storytellers. The series is brought to you by Cap Logistics. Cap Logistics are experts offering you customized transportation solutions for all of your needs. So please visit caplogistics.com today. So today's topic, the big picture is batteries and hazmat. We're going to talk a little bit about lithium batteries. It's something that we're all touch and hold every single day in our hand. And our guest is Kerry Slaven. So Kerry, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Doug.
We're looking forward to a good conversation today. So before we jump into the topic, it's always nice to learn a little bit about our guest, a little bit about your background. So why don't you just share with your audience kind of your story?
Okay. Well, I have been doing logistics for 30 years. I have been doing hazmat training since 1997.
Okay.
I train whoever needs to be trained, freight forwarders, people who ship, airline personnel, whatever needs to be trained. I've even offered to train the FAA agent here in town on more things. So,
and what was their response to that?
She's all excited about it because she hasn't had any radioactive training at all. And I offered to teach her. So, but she knows that means math.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one for sure. So we were talking a little bit off air, so we'll just kind of simplify everything and just start from the beginning.
Okay.
We're going to focus on the lithium battery. So maybe start with basically what does a battery do, and then flip it over to how is a lithium battery different than the cell-based batteries that we may throw into some of our devices.
Those are excellent questions. Lithium batteries, well, battery first off can be a primary or secondary source for power. That can be integrated into devices, instruments, articles, equipment, whatever. Then the difference between lithium and what you're thinking, the cell type. Actually, a cell is one unit by itself, and a battery is actually two or more electrically connected cells to make a battery. And that's true in lithium or alkaline or nickel cadmium or whatever. And with lithium, the difference is that with your Energizer type batteries, they're non-rechargeable and they drain quickly. The lithiums can be, there's two different kinds of lithium, but the lithium that you're talking about is ion, which means that it is rechargeable.
Okay. And that's what the ion piece of it means?
That's the ion. The ion means that it is rechargeable, whereas the lithium metal are a one-time use until they die. For instance, a lithium metal may be in something scientific where they're trying to do weather data from dropsondes or radiosondes, that they need that little parachuted instrument to collect the data, send it back, but then it can die on its own because it's not going to be retrieved. Or in everyday life, maybe somebody like yourself, not that I know, may have a pacemaker, and that's going to be a lithium metal. You can't recharge that battery. So lithium ion is rechargeable. The whole thing with lithium over the alkaline or nickel cadmium batteries is that lithium batteries last up to 4 times longer, and they're designed for harsher conditions like intense cold or intense heat conditions to still operate. So, for instance, there's a lot of lithium-ion batteries in space on satellites right now that they're using. So the solar arrays will recharge lithium-ion batteries and keep the units going.
Interesting. Well, I didn't know the difference between, you just hear lithium and you think it's all one and the same, so the ion piece of it. So we talked about pacemakers and space exploration. I'm not really into the space piece of it, but what other type of devices that our listeners would encounter on a daily basis that would have one or the other?
In everyday life, if you're using a laptop or a cell phone, you have a lithium-ion battery.
Okay.
And that is rechargeable, and you can not use a lithium metal in a phone, so it'll always be the lithium-ion for the things that you are recharging. People may use the alkaline for like a Walkman type of thing. I know I'm old. but
I know what that is.
but that would have been, the old days of, the alkaline type batteries on that.
Gotcha. So is the ion battery larger, or is it just simply more powerful, or why?
It's more powerful. It depends still on the size. Doesn't matter. It can be really small as far as like even button cell batteries can be lithium.
Okay.
And they can go up to the giants like with the ABSL batteries that are on satellites, the big NOAA, GOES-R satellite and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the size doesn't matter. It's about the being able to recharge it, and that the drain takes longer than a normal, and then the extreme conditions such as the extreme cold in space or the extreme heat.
Gotcha. So, excuse me, one question on the rechargeable. Does it lose power? I've always thought maybe it's a wives' tale, if you will, that if you recharge it every time you recharge it, the power decreases a little bit. Is there any truth behind that?
There is truth behind that, yeah. That it's preferential that you drain them almost all the way down before you recharge them, because then it messes up the life of the battery by dropping it in increments. So yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's jump into, so now that we got kind of a perspective of lithium specifically,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about the regulations. Obviously, this is a supply chain logistics and transportation show, so we're going to flip it over a little bit to the transportation piece of moving the batteries. So what's the big deal, right? I mean, you get all these batteries.
The big deal, first off, the big deal is there's regulations because it's concerning the safe transport of hazardous materials. So it isn't just lithium batteries, metal or ion. It's all hazardous materials. There's 9 classes of hazardous materials that are moving at any time across our roads. So the regulations are about the safe transport.
Okay.
The big deal is that a lot of people may have not had training, and they're trying to guess. A lot of people may not even know that there's regulations out there, and they're just doing it because we've done this for 20 years or whatever. And the big deal is that you cannot, anyone who in the course of their employment affects the safe transport of hazardous materials must be trained and tested or certified. And so you can't do that until even with lithium batteries, even with taking what's an accepted lithium battery, you can't take an exception unless you know the regulations. The big deal is that the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, under the Department of Transportation, can come in and assess fines. They can go with a $77,400 fine to start the bidding, and then they have a list in 49 CFR Part 107 Subpart D, the appendix, that can go through everything they can think of in aggregate with its own fines that they can get you for. And if there's criminal intent, then you can go up to 10 years in prison.
Wow. And would that be the actual individual that's handling it? Would the company be liable? Or?
Both. It's a double whammy. Because you as an individual, you signed, I call it the Bubba Law, that you signed saying, I did everything I was supposed to do, so if not, then you get to go see Bubba. So it's double, because who goes to prison? Only people, not companies.
Yeah.
So it's double, that financially both the company and the individual can be liable, and obviously they really want to whack more the company because it's their responsibility to make sure that their employees are trained.
Right. So I know you hear this term, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So I'm a 20-something-year-old kid that's packing product for my company, and there's a lithium-ion battery or just a lithium battery, and I'm more focused on protecting the item, and I'm not trying to do anything wrong. Does that individual still need the type of training?
Absolutely. And when you say, talking about ignorance, the law doesn't believe in ignorance, because they're going to start off with the presumption of this is a knowing violation. You say, well, I didn't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You are now in the world of hazardous materials transportation. You are expected to know what the regulations are. So they start everything off as, this is a knowing violation now. So they don't accept ignorance. And the kiddo that you're talking about could be just packing up laptops to ship.
Right.
And not realizing he's actually shipping hazardous materials.
Is there a certain quantity, right? So you mentioned laptops, and I'm very visual and need examples, right? So I am packing up some laptops to go to a trade show, and I'm meeting up with some sales reps so they can do their demos, and I'm throwing a couple laptops in a box. Is there a threshold that says this is now officially hazmat? And like who? I got a bunch of questions on that, so I'll just let you answer the first one.
So your threshold is for lithium ion is based on the watt hours.
Okay.
And to find your watt hours, you take your amp hours times your voltage, and that will equal your watt hours.
Okay.
If your watt hours for a battery is 100 watt hours or less, you're in what we call the accepted. And then you have to have everything with a proper shipping name. So are you shipping just the batteries, or are you shipping lithium-ion batteries contained in equipment, or are you shipping spares, so lithium-ion batteries packed with equipment? So they each have the same threshold.
Really?
Yes. So there's 3 proper shipping names for ion, same 3 for metal. So your packing instructions then will give you your first section, 1A in every section, is going to be you are fully regulated. Why? Because you are over 100 watt hours per battery. That's fully regulated. Accepted is section 2. Now, if you are 100 watt hours or less, you are an accepted package. Now, if you are batteries, you can have no more than 2 batteries in a shipment as accepted, and you can offer no more than 1 package as an accepted package. So that cuts it down right
Yeah, you
there.
just answered my next question was just pack everything in 2s and send it out.
So then when you get into contained in equipment or packed with equipment, then packed with you can't have any more than what's allowed to just run that piece of equipment. You can't put a laptop and 6 batteries in there. It has to be only what can run just that one piece of equipment. And then you're allowed up to weights. Now you can go up to 35 kilos per package for cargo aircraft only, or you can go up to 5 kilos for passenger, contained in or packed with. Batteries by themselves are completely forbidden on passenger aircraft. They're always cargo aircraft only.
Huh. Interesting. So that was leading into some of my next talk. Obviously, there's the different modes of transportation. Obviously, you have ground, which I would define as like an LTL or a truck shipment, and then you have the parcel, and then the air freight that if you're sending something internationally. Do those regulations just exponentially get more complex and regulated based on the type of transit? Tell me a little bit about the differences.
They absolutely do. If you look at exposure to people and time of confinement, that's how you'll know what's the least stringent and the most stringent.
Okay.
So if we want to truck batteries across the country, and it's only going to be one person, maybe a team of 2, and they're in a cab and they're away from the freight, and they can be across the country anywhere in a week, then you're going to look at, okay, now there's less restrictive measures there. In fact, for accepted, now you can go up to 300 watt hours rather than the 100, and you can still be accepted and just do the minimal to get it through.
Right.
Now we get more restrictive. An airplane, because now we may have a couple hundred people on that one aircraft, and nobody's going to be able to get down into that hold. And so that's more restrictive. So those are where we're going to get your,
Gotcha.
what everybody knows by the IATA restrictions and everything. It's all the same in 49 CFR, which covers all modes, IATA air, and then the IMDG, which covers ocean. And ocean is more restrictive because why? They're on the water
I was about to say,
a whole lot longer.
that's
than
almost
anybody.
counterintuitive. You'd think I have this wide open space.
That's it. And so ocean is very, very restrictive.
That's really interesting. Who sets the regulations? Right, we're talking about all these different restrictions, and maybe that just falls under the hazmat guidelines. But
no, that's really an excellent question. First and foremost, the United States is called the competent authority.
Okay.
And so first off, the Pipeline Hazardous Materials and Safety Administration, Department of Transportation, will set regulations for all modes: air, truck, and water, and rail. They'll set all the regulations, and that's codified in 49 CFR. then all of the different competent authorities from around the world, each country, comes together, and what they create are the United Nations model regulations. From that, that's where everybody's agreed around the world, we agree on all of these, and then from there you'll take it out by the parent organizations of, you may have the International Civil Air Organization with their technical instructions. Then underneath that, the carriers of air are now going to be your IATA, the International Air Transport Association.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with ocean, you're going to have the International Maritime Organization parent, and their carriers now are going to have the IMDG, the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code for their ocean carriers. It's all based on the UN models, but the competent authority of each country takes precedence.
Interesting. So if you ship something air from here to, say, London, and then it gets transferred and put on a truck and goes through the channel into France, so to speak, do you have to follow regulations for 3 different countries in that model? Or
as long as you have done everything by regulatory to make sure you cover it, you should be okay, because there's a reciprocity agreement with countries.
Okay.
However, there are different rules. Canada has their TDG rules. Mexico has their NOMS. Europe has the ADR and RID regulations. And so you must make sure, as the same as everybody, if they're shipping to the United States, at the final, you get first point, and from that point, you better be compliant with their regulations. So same thing coming into the United States, we'll accept it, but if it's wrong, then from there it has to be changed to the U.S. regulations.
Interesting. So going back to an example, let's talk about the air freight and cargo versus passenger. So I'm on an airplane, and I'm looking around, and every single person on the top level of that passenger airplane has a phone in their pocket. 186 people on a plane or whatever it is, plus laptops, plus. So there's a lot of power. There's a lot of lithium ion on that top shelf. So if you combine all those batteries and put them in the deck underneath, there's regulations, but there's no regulations to say there's tons of batteries here on an individual person on the top of the plane.
That's where I have to correct you. Even passengers.
That's why you're the pro. That's why you're here.
Even passengers fall under 49 CFR 175.10,
Okay.
which are your passenger restrictions. You can do them as carry-on. Why? Because in the event of an incident or an accident, it can be gotten to with a fire extinguisher, a dry fire extinguisher. We don't want water on these. And then they're allowed per carry-on, and no more than 1 spare battery is carry-on. They're absolutely forbidden in passenger baggage to go into the cargo hold. So there are regulations that concern, and it concerns also the crew of the aircraft as well, from what they can carry and what they can put below, because we have to declare all hazmat so they can be put in the right places in that plane.
Got it. So that's part of the fine print that we never look at that says, did you pack your own bag and what do you have in there? That's kind of where that...
Part of it, yes. And when they have all their little hazmat things, they're trying to let you know there's things in your daily life that you may not think are hazmat, but they are.
Yeah. Very interesting. We were talking before we got on air, nobody's above the law, I think is another adage, and we were telling a story about an airline that self-grounded itself, if that's the right the right term, because of batteries that they didn't really think were...
It was the Dreamliners, the 787s, when they were rolling out a few years ago. They were having problems. The engineering hadn't looked at the problems before they started flying, and the batteries were going faulty and starting to create small fires, or we call it lighting up. And so they self-grounded themselves until they could re-engineer the battery, and it took them about a year to get back up in the air again. So nobody is above the law. Airlines have to follow all these laws. And even though people may look at an IATA book and the book says regulations, that's actually just an agreed upon by the United Nations, but it's an unenforceable field document. The real enforcement comes from 49 CFR Part 175 Air.
Interesting. Yeah, you never think about that. But in your opinion, right? So at any given time, I'm trying to figure out the easiest way to ask this question. There's a lot of non-compliance that's happening every single day. There's non-compliant product moving right now, and it's not, there's no ill will. What do you think at any given time if there's ion batteries moving through the supply chain on any mode that is not compliant? What do you think percentage-wise? Or
I would venture to guess that a minimum of 50% and maybe even higher are probably non-compliant. There's just so much out there that people just don't realize that there's actual regulations on this.
Yeah, it's interesting. So other than, I'm assuming based on our conversation and some of the press that's been received with devices spontaneously combusting, is it primarily the fire? Is that what the heat of the battery, that it's the fire that's the key thing?
And it creates a chain reaction fire. And pure lithium is actually a metal that is water reactive. So real pure lithium will light up if it comes in contact with water at all. So you can't just put a fire hose on them,
right?
Because that creates more
like
of
a grease fire almost.
Yep.
It's amazing. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around all the acronyms and things that you lose, and I go back to the 20-year-old kid that's getting his career started in logistics, and he's trying to do the right thing. Like, what resources are out there? Obviously, you can talk a little bit about your business, but what resources are out there, and what's the awareness being generated by the regulatory entities, right? It's like, I want you to comply. Here's where you go to be compliant and create awareness, because you really don't hear a whole lot about the
really
lithium.
don't. And
so where would people go to learn more?
There are many sites you can go to. For instance, Lion.com, DGI. There's different entities that do training. Kerry and Associates. There's lots of training people out there. There's a lot of people who will do just even quick online training. The law says you must be trained and tested, but it doesn't give you a timeline of, well, Doug, you need to have 5,000 hours of training before you're qualified. It doesn't say that. So it just says you must be trained and tested, and then that your employer will certify you. So the Department of Transportation tries to do an outreach, and if you're not aware of their existence, if you're not aware of their website and all the resources in their website, then you're just not going to know.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'm here local, and so I work a full-time job, but I will come to your business, and I can train at nights or on Saturdays and get you compliant, and we'll have fun with it too.
Yes, yeah. I have not sat on one of your sessions, but I know enough about your business to know that it will definitely be entertaining, and you certainly engage the audience. So that's terrific. So if you were a company, right, maybe some advice that you would give to a company out there that may be manufacturing or even shipping ion batteries, give us the quick and dirty, like, here's what you should be doing now to be compliant and protect not only your employees, but safe passage of the cargo.
Absolutely. First and foremost, you must get people trained. And from there, we can determine whether or not what you're shipping requires registration to be able to ship what you're shipping. And we can cover all that. I will personalize everything. I don't do just a generic class. I personalize based on everything that you're actually shipping, so that you have a full understanding of what's expected of you. Yeah,
that's absolutely interesting. So, well, it's been great to learn a little bit about the batteries, and we appreciate you coming by. What's the name of your company?
My company is Slaven Consulting.
Okay.
And the website is Slaven, SLAVEN-consulting.com.
Excellent. That's terrific. Well, Kerry, I personally learned a lot. You hear lithium batteries, and it's just kind of this general, ambiguous term, and so I certainly learned a lot, and hopefully our audience did as well.
Well,
so
hopefully we can disambiguate the situation.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's even a word, but it sounded good, right? That's terrific. So, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And thank you for joining us today on the Connect and Collaborate Network, featuring supply chain logistics to storytellers. And don't forget, it's brought to you by Cap Logistics. We've had a great storyteller today, so Kerry, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, take care.
All right, you too.